Bloomberg Technology. Coming up, India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi meets with President Trump for the first time. We will bring you their press conference from the White House live, plus break down the future of the relationship between Silicon Valley and New Delhi. Plus, Apple steals some of Alphabet's thunder with an autonomous fleet announcement of its own. We'll discuss the Alphabet Avis rental tie-up and Apple's new deal with Hertz. And Google could set a new world record when it comes to antitrust fines, how rivals ganged up on the search engine to force the EU's hand, and how much the U.S. tech giant could be on the hook for. But first, to our lead. The U.S. Supreme Court has given President Trump a partial victory on his controversial travel ban. The High Court will allow a limited version of the ban to go into effect and said it will hear arguments on the case in the fall. Now remember, tech CEOs around the country were vocal in fighting the executive order, calling it unconstitutional. In a statement released by the White House, President Trump said of the court's decision, quote, "Today's ruling allows me to use an important tool for protecting our nation's homeland." Joining us now, Bloomberg legal reporter Kartikeya Mehrotra, and this is fairly surprising, isn't it? Why did the court rule this way?
It looks like they're looking at this case from a different angle from other district courts previously. The argument made earlier was of a First Amendment claim, but this was a religious violation. The executive order was discriminatory. The Supreme Court is looking at this from a standing perspective. Do people who don't have any connections to the United States have the right to sue in the United States? Their ruling today seems to imply not, that those who are refugees without any links, they're banned.
They did more than just agree to hear the case. They actually restored part of the president's travel ban, right?
Right. So there are effectively people from these 6 Muslim-majority countries. If you don't have a relationship with anyone in the United States, if you don't have a job in the United States, if you are not admitted to a university in the United States, then you are banned. Everyone else can enter from these 6 countries.
So what does this mean for immigrants? Like at this very moment, who can enter the United States?
Yeah, if you have a job in Silicon Valley, if you have admission to a university anywhere in the United States, you can come to work. If you know someone and are seeking a refugee status or a visa, there's a chance that you are, not a chance, you are not banned. If you don't have any links to the United States right now, it's going to be hard to get that visa. What
do we know about how this is impacting traffic at airports?
That's what a lot of these immigrants' rights groups are weary of. The next 72 hours are going to be crucial to find out exactly how things are going to play out. If you remember in January, there was pure chaos at the airports when no one really knew how this new policy was going to be enforced. We're sort of in that limbo right now. Are customs agents going to be left and right banning people from entering the country, or will they have strict guidelines they have to stick by when admitting people? We don't know the answer yet.
So what's next? I mean, will we see clarity on U.S. immigration policy?
There's going to be a lot of litigation before we get to clarity. There's going to be a hearing likely in the fall, maybe in October, before the Supreme Court. In the meantime, you're going to have a ton of immigrants' rights groups, individual plaintiffs suing over this issue of bona fide relationship. Whether you have a relationship with someone in the U.S. or not, that's going to be decided by local courts for the next few months.
All right, Kartikeya Mehrotra, we'll continue to follow. Thank you so much, our legal reporter for Bloomberg News. Staying with news out of Washington, we are awaiting a joint statement shortly from President Trump and Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi. The leaders of the world's 2 largest democracies are meeting in the Oval Office and expected to discuss expanding ties on fighting terrorism and the future of the H-1B visa program. A short time ago, President Trump had this to say.
It's a great honor to have Prime Minister Modi of India, who has been such a great prime minister. I've been speaking with him and reading about you, and you have done a great job economically. India is doing very well, and in so many other ways.
However, President Trump wasn't the first meeting for Prime Minister Modi during this visit. On Sunday, the Indian leader met with some of the biggest U.S. tech names, including Apple CEO Tim Cook, Amazon CEO Jeff Bezos, and Google's Sundar Pichai. It's almost deja vu of the roundtable discussions Trump held just last week. For more insight on these meetings, we're joined by Anubhav Gupta, Assistant Director of the Asia Society Policy Institute. So first of all, what is at stake for this meeting between President Trump and Prime Minister Modi today?
Emily, thanks for having me. So this is essentially a first date, and both sides really want to impress each other. Prime Minister Modi, this is his 5th visit to the United States in his 3 years in office. So he has invested a lot of political capital, a lot of time in really moving India closer to the United States. On the U.S. side, President Trump really needs some good news. He wants this to be a relationship that works well. India can be a strong partner in counterterrorism, a great partner for the United States in the Asia Pacific. So on both sides, there are a lot of win-win issues. The question is going to be, there are a few issues that there are real differences, and can the two sides manage those productively?
Now, some of the tech CEOs tweeted after their meeting with the Prime Minister at the Indian embassy. Jeff Bezos saying, terrific meeting with Prime Minister Modi, always impressed, energized by optimism and invention in India, excited to keep investing and growing. Tim Cook saying, great to see you again. We're inspired by your vision for India and excited about what we can achieve together. Now, both of these companies have a lot to gain by a strong relationship with India. What exactly is at stake for these business leaders?
I mean, India is the second fastest major economy in the world right now. Last year it was the first. Because of demonetization, it slowed down a slight bit, but it still grew at 6% in the past year. And so it is going to be, in the medium to long term, one of the fastest growing major economies. It's a huge market, 1.3 billion people, and it's mostly untapped. Current trade between the U.S. and India lies at 115 billion, but many experts believe that there's potential for that to be at 500 billion. Apple, just as one example, has over 500, almost 500 stores around the world. It doesn't have a single fully owned store in India. So India is a major market. It has a huge and growing middle class that's going to be spending a lot of money, and these companies want a part of the pie.
Now, as we understand it, they expressed some concerns about the regulatory environment in India. We know Prime Minister Modi has consolidated power in India. He's positioned well for re-election. What is the hope that regulations will relax in India?
So I think the problem has always been the expectation of change, but also the speed at which the change will occur. So, reform has happened under Prime Minister Modi. He has lowered a lot of investment caps in India. The investment sector has really opened up. We had the GST legislation, which is the goods and services tax, and that's going to be important, and that's going to have a positive impact on the economy. But these changes have come slowly, and what I think there's going to continue to be a delicate dance where these companies will continue to push. And they're hoping that finally, now that Prime Minister Modi has some space going to 2019, that maybe he will be willing to invest even more political capital in speeding up some of this reform. He's going to have to go back to India and talk to his bureaucrats, talk to his ministers to get them to get to work on these issues.
Now, a couple of the issues we expect that President Trump and Prime Minister Modi may disagree on are intellectual property, the H-1B visa program. The visa program specifically very important to tech companies. What do we know in terms of what can actually be moved forward on this issue?
So on the H-1B visa issue, I think we're not really looking at something happening right away. President Trump instituted a Hire American executive order, but all that order really did was ask for a review of worker visa programs. So we don't really know where that review will end up. What India and what the Prime Minister is hoping to convey is that, President Trump, please don't take on or please don't implement any sort of unilateral, drastic measure. They know that Congress is going to have a huge role to play in this, and they want whatever solution comes out, whatever changes that happen, to focus on the abuse of the system and not any kind of unilateral change that really lowers the number of foreign workers that come into the U.S. There's going to be a lot of lobbying happening from Indian companies, from U.S. companies, especially in the tech sector, as well as the Indian government, to both the administration but Congress as well on this issue.
All right, Anubhav Gupta, Asia Society Assistant Director, thanks so much for joining us. As we mentioned, President Trump is currently meeting with Prime Minister Modi in Washington. When that meeting is over, both of them will give a joint statement in the Rose Garden. We'll bring you those comments live when they begin. Looking at a live shot of the Rose Garden there. Now, the Supreme Court is seeking Trump's views on the Apple-Samsung patent fight. Apple won a $119 million legal battle against Samsung over smartphone and tablet features, including slide to unlock. Samsung is now asking the High Court to consider two separate decisions by the U.S. Court of Appeals for the Federal Circuit, which handles all patent appeals. Just last year, in an 8-3 ruling, the appeals court reinstated the entire verdict after an earlier panel had ruled two patents of Apple's invalid and a third not infringed. Coming up, shares of rental car companies are jumping today as Avis partners with Alphabet's self-driving car unit Waymo, and Hertz teams up with Apple. What does this deal mean for the future of autonomous partnerships? We will discuss next. And Bloomberg Technology is live streaming on Twitter. Check us out at Bloomberg Tech TV weekdays, 5 p.m. in New York, 2 p.m. in San Francisco. This is Bloomberg.
Anything, Travis? You're good? Good? Check. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Hey. Check. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Testing.
Shares of the rental car company Avis jumped as much as 21% after reaching a deal with Alphabet's self-driving car unit Waymo. As part of the partnership, Avis will service and manage Waymo's fleet of about 600 cars in Phoenix. And just hours after the announcement, we learned that Apple is working with Hertz to test self-driving technology with a small fleet of Lexus SUVs. Hertz also up by as much as 18%. So what is this fledgling field, and can we expect more partnerships to come about? Joining us now, Bloomberg Tech editor Alistair Barr and Alex Webb, who covers Bloomberg Technology and Apple for us specifically. The Alphabet deal is more substantial, so we'll start there. Alistair, what exactly is happening here?
So in Phoenix, there's these 600 autonomous vans that Waymo has, and they're testing them out with volunteers. And basically, when the cars are finished for the day or the night, or when something breaks, basically Avis will be responsible for all that type of thing, making sure they're clean, stuff like that.
And with Apple?
With Apple, it's a lot smaller. It's basically that Apple, they've got a lot of very highly paid engineers. The last thing they want to be doing is having those guys looking after doing the mechanics of their cars. So they lease these cars from Hertz, and Hertz is therefore responsible for that upkeep.
So how big a deal are these partnerships generally?
I think what's really interesting about it is that if you look at some of the really important financials in this whole space, the big risk for people owning huge fleets of cars is, as you know, when you buy a car from one day to the next, its value falls like $10,000, right? So if you are not owning those cars, but someone else owns them, that gives the potential that that sort of depreciation is on someone else's balance sheet and not your own. That can help keep your net margin very high. Now, of course, Alphabet still owns these cars, but it hints at a broader agreement with Zipcar, which is the unit of Avis, and that might be what is keeping people optimistic from the Google side.
What do we know about exclusivity here?
Yeah, they're not exclusive, and Google often does these types of deals where they never like to be tied down like that. But from the point of view of for Avis, it's very interesting because they have basically cars that do millions and millions of miles every year, and Waymo needs that type of data to train its AI and its self-driving software. So it could work quite well, and if any whiff that Avis is involved in that type of technological transaction, that's very good for Avis.
Are we expecting to see more partnerships in this area? I mean, Uber has been a bit distracted. I mean, but what could we see when it comes to the other players?
I mean, in some ways, we've seen some of this stuff already. Daimler did a €1 billion deal last year to acquire a fleet management company called Athlon Car Lease International. Bit of a mouthful, but they've done a very similar deal in the space. The other element, of course, is a lot of tier one automotive suppliers, people like Bosch, Continental, Magna. They're really trying to build out their aftermarket business because a car might do, because it's always going to be in use, a lot more miles in any given year. So the replacement business for seats and clutches and all these kind of very nitty-gritty components, they'll be replaced a lot more frequently, which is a huge opportunity for the people who maintain these vehicles.
And the Alphabet partnership is limited to Phoenix right now. Any idea when this might expand to other cities?
I think they're going to do this test for probably at least 6 months or more, and they're basically going to see how the public react to that. And I don't think they'll go anywhere else until that's been going for at least 3 or 4 or 6 months.
And Alex, you know, we've been talking about since our interview with Tim Cook, where he spoke for the first time more extensively about Apple's car ambitions. Do we know anything more now about what direction they're actually going as a result of this?
I mean, the thing that's really interesting, if you look at the scope of these two things, as Alice has said, Waymo, 600 cars, Apple, 6. It's a huge difference. And I'll leave it up to the viewers to infer what that means for where Apple's project is compared to Google's. Apple's been throwing a lot of money and a lot of people at this space, but Google has 600 cars on the, or will soon have 600 cars on the road.
All right, Alex Webb, Bloomberg Tech, our tech editor, Alistair Barr, thanks so much. Remember, we are waiting for President Trump and Prime Minister Modi to speak in Washington. You're looking at a live shot there of the Rose Garden. They are about to give a joint statement. We will have it for you live. This is Bloomberg. Alphabet's Google is set to face a record antitrust fine from the European Union on Tuesday for promoting its shopping search service over those of smaller rivals. This according to 2 people familiar with the probe that has dramatically sped up in recent days. The penalty is expected to exceed a $1.2 billion fine slapped on Intel back in 2009. Here with more, Caroline Hyde from London. So Caroline, what is the latest so far as we know?
Well, as you said, we could be getting this as soon as tomorrow. And as you said, there's really a dramatic speed up in the pace of this negotiation, which is an investigation that's lasted 7 years. But suddenly it looks as though the finishing line has been brought forward, so much so that some of the Google representatives themselves haven't been told about the new EU timetable, which is usually done as a matter of courtesy. But as you say, this is a record antitrust fine that could be coming Google's way, at least $1.2 billion, bigger than the Intel record of 2009. Key also could be if they're asking any changes to the business model of Google. That actually could be more painful because we know that Google's got quite a lot of cash on its balance sheet and notably makes about, what, $90 billion in revenue per year. So $1.2 billion isn't exactly going to be significant. But overall, the EU Competition Commissioner, that's Margaret Vestager, she's going to be laying out the ruling, we understand, ahead of notably their holidays, which is perhaps why we've seen a bit of a speed up. But also, it's perhaps a bit of a quieter time in the news, if that's even barely possible.
A big decision then coming potentially very soon, and the investigations into Alphabet don't end there. Tell us what else is going on.
I think this is notable because there's not one, there's not two, there are 3 investigations going on from the European Commission into Alphabet at the moment. Well, number 1 has been, of course, the shopping that's being investigated at the moment, the way in which they bring their pictures and services right to the top of your search rather than potentially they seem to hide the smaller competitors and other search engines, which is the allegation levelled at Google this time round. But it's not just that investigation, there's also an investigation into their Android software. So basically the claims are that they force manufacturers to add Google's own search and web browsers when you have an Android-powered mobile phone. And third investigation is the AdSense online advertising service. So clearly this is all a bit of an issue. I might just add that Google has made responses to this current shopping investigation, saying they're working constructively with the European Commission and that they strongly believe that their innovation in online shopping has been good for shoppers, for retailers, and get this, for competitors too.
Now, the EU Commissioner, as we've discussed, is not afraid of big numbers and big punishments when it comes to these bills sent to the U.S. tech giants. So are we expecting something fairly sizable here?
I think so, and I think you've got to put into perspective, they look at not only the years that this has been going on for and therefore come up with the size of fine, feeling that perhaps competitors have been hard done by, not just for 1 or 2 years, but for several. And I say the investigation's been going on for 7 years, but also the size of the revenue stream. And Alphabet, as I said, makes in $90 billion per year, and therefore you've got to make it substantial if it's going to hurt in any sort of way. I mean, this actually pales into insignificance if you think of $1.2 billion compared to the Apple tax fine that we saw back in August. That was 13 billion euros. She is not afraid of levelling these sorts of sizes. I mean, just think of the Facebook fine that we saw just a few months ago regarding the supposed allegations that they perhaps misled the European Commission when investigating the WhatsApp merger. And that was only 110 million euros. It feels they got off lightly. But we have spoken to Margaret Vestager about this before, saying, look, are you attacking US tech here, and why do you give such big punishments? And she sort of tries to make out, look, it's for the sake of protection. Have a listen.
We have a number of Google cases, actually 3 by now, because in Europe you're more than welcome to be successful, to grow, to be big, and we will applaud you all the way. But the thing is that if you start to misuse your dominant position to prevent others from having the same, fight for success, then we get concerned. And that's the example of the Google cases, that we think, well, Google is misusing a dominant position to promote itself, to stay where they are, and not to allow for others to compete with them in a sufficiently fair way.
That was when we were speaking to the European Competition Commissioner back in September of last year, just after they'd whacked that 13 billion euro fine towards Apple. And I think it's also notable that it's not just US tech that gets it. German truck makers got a big fine of 3 billion this time last year. Daimler, Volvo. It's not always the US tech giants.
All right, Caroline Hyde in London for us. We will stay posted as that comes out. The fallout continues from a cyber attack at the UK Parliament over the weekend. The email accounts of around 90 lawmakers were compromised in what's been called a sustained and determined hack. All staff were told their accounts would be suspended until they changed their passwords and put in place a multi-factor authentication process. It comes a week after the Times of London reported that passwords of thousands of UK government officials were being sold on Russian hacker forums. And a reminder, President Trump is currently meeting with Prime Minister Modi in Washington. When that meeting is over, the two leaders will be giving a joint statement in the Rose Garden. You see a live shot of it there. We will bring this conversation to you live. This is Bloomberg.
I'm Elisa Parenti in Washington, and you're watching Bloomberg Technology. Let's start with a check of your first word news. British Prime Minister Theresa May forged a deal with the Democratic Unionist Party to get the votes to pass her agenda. The agreement comes with more than $1 billion in new funds for Northern Ireland, expected to draw the ire of other regions. The deal became necessary after May's failed attempt to secure a majority. She also assured EU citizens with 5 years continued residence they would be granted settlement status. Brazil's former president Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva still leads in the country's presidential race, despite a pending court decision that could ban him from running and corruption accusations. A new poll shows him with about 30% of first-round voter intentions. Cyprus rejected a UN document supposed to act as a guide for the peace summit this week, saying the document disregards, quote, issues of essential importance for the Greek Cypriot side. Talks will continue on how security will be overseen if Cyprus is reunified. Colombian President Juan Manuel Santos is thanking first responders for helping avoid what could have been a deadlier tragedy. That's after they rushed to the scene to pull out tourists after their vessel capsized. 160 passengers were on board. 6 people are dead and several others are still missing. Global news 24 hours a day, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Elisa Parenti. This is Bloomberg. It's just after 5:30 p.m. Monday here in Washington, 7:30 now Tuesday morning in Sydney. We are joined by Bloomberg's Paul Allen. He's got a look at the markets. Paul, good morning to you.
Good morning, Elisa. It's looking pretty quiet here in Australia for this Tuesday, with ASX futures up by just a single point. Keep an eye on Rio Tinto today. The coal miner will be having a shift.
All right, Paul, thanks so much. We're going to get straight to the White House, where President Trump and Prime Minister Modi are live. Let's listen in.
Prime Minister Modi, thank you for being here with us today. It's a great honor to welcome the leader of the world's largest democracy to the White House. I have always had a deep admiration for your country and for its people, and a profound appreciation for your rich culture, heritage, and traditions. This summer, India will celebrate the 70th anniversary of its independence. And on behalf of the United States, I want to congratulate the Indian people on this magnificent milestone in the life of your very, very incredible nation. During my campaign, I pledged that if elected, India would have a true friend in the White House. And that is now exactly what you have, a true friend. The friendship between the United States and India is built on shared values, including our shared commitment to democracy. Not many people know it, but both American and the Indian constitutions begin with the same three very beautiful words: we the people. The Prime Minister and I both understand the crucial importance of those words, which helps to form the foundation of cooperation between our two countries. Relations between countries are strongest when they are devoted to the interests of the people we serve. And after our meetings today, I will say that the relationship between India and the United States has never been stronger, has never been better. I'm proud to announce to the media, to the American people, and to the Indian people that Prime Minister Modi and I are world leaders in social media. We're believers, giving the citizens of our countries the opportunity to hear directly from their elected officials and for us to hear directly from them. I guess it's worked very well in both cases. I am thrilled to salute you, Prime Minister Modi, and the Indian people for all that you are accomplishing together. Your accomplishments have been vast. India has the fastest growing economy in the world. We hope we're going to be catching you very soon in terms of percentage increase. I have to tell you that. We're working on it. In just 2 weeks, you will begin to implement the largest tax overhaul in your country's history. We're doing that also, by the way, creating great new opportunities for your citizens. You have a big vision for improving infrastructure, and you are fighting government corruption, which is always a grave threat to democracy. Together, our countries can help chart an optimistic path into the future, one that unleashes the power of new technology, new infrastructure, and the enthusiasm and excitement of very hardworking and very dynamic people. I look forward to working with you, Mr. Prime Minister, to create jobs in our countries, to grow our economies, and to create a trading relationship that is fair and reciprocal. It is important that barriers be removed to the export of U.S. goods into your markets and that we reduce our trade deficit with your country. I was pleased to learn about an Indian Airlines recent order of 100 new American planes, one of the largest orders of its kind, which will support thousands and thousands of American jobs. We're also looking forward to exporting more American energy to India as your economy grows, including major long-term contracts to purchase American natural gas, which are right now being negotiated, and we will sign them, trying to get the price up a little bit. To further our economic partnership, I'm excited to report that the Prime Minister has invited my daughter Ivanka to lead the U.S. delegation to the Global Entrepreneurship Summit in India this fall, and I believe she has accepted. Finally, the security partnership between the United States and India is incredibly important. Both our nations have been struck by the evils of terrorism, and we are both determined to destroy terrorist organizations and the radical ideology that drives them. We will destroy radical Islamic terrorism. Our militaries are working every day to enhance cooperation between our military forces, and next month They will join together with the Japanese Navy to take part in the largest maritime exercise ever conducted in the vast Indian Ocean. I also thank the Indian people for their contributions to the effort in Afghanistan and for joining us in applying new sanctions against the North Korean regime. The North Korean regime is causing tremendous problems, and it's something that has to be dealt with, and probably dealt with rapidly. Working together, I truly believe our two countries can set an example for many other nations, make great strides in defeating common threats, and make great progress in unleashing amazing prosperity and growth. Prime Minister Modi, thank you again for joining me today and for visiting our country and our wonderful White House and Oval Office. I enjoyed our very productive conversation this afternoon and look forward to its continuation tonight at dinner. The future of our partnership has never looked brighter. India and the United States will always be tied together in friendship and respect. Prime Minister Modi, thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, sir.
Rashtrapati Donald Trump and First Lady,
Vice President, ladies and gentlemen, ladies and gentlemen of the media. Right from the opening tweet to the end of our talks, President Trump's welcome, which was filled with friendliness, his
First Lady द्वारा
a warm welcome to the White House by himself and the First Lady. I would like to thank both of you from the bottom of my heart for this warm welcome.
President Trump ने मेरे लिए जो भाव व्यक्त किए,
I would also like to give special thanks to you, President Trump, for having spent so much time with me, for having spoken such kind words about me and my country. And I would like to tell you that I'm eager to welcome your daughter to India for the Entrepreneurship Summit. President Trump, I'd once again like to thank you for the time that you have spent with me. I'd like to give you special time. Thanks for that. My visit and our talks today will mark a very important page in the history of the collaboration and cooperation between our two nations. The talks between His Excellency President Trump and myself today have been extremely important from all points of view for several reasons. Because they were based on mutual trust, because of the convergence and similarities they revealed in our values, in our priorities, in our concerns and interests, because they focused on the highest levels of achievement in our cooperation and mutual support and partnership. Because our two countries are global engines of growth. Because the all-round or comprehensive economic growth and joint progress of both countries and both societies is the main objective for both the President and myself, and will remain so. because the top priority for both President Trump and myself is to protect our societies from global challenges like terrorism. And because our aim is the strengthening of India and the USA, two great democracies in the world. Friends, our robust strategic partnership is such that it touches upon almost all areas of human endeavor. In our conversation today, President Trump and I have discussed all dimensions of India-US relations at length. Both nations are committed to a bilateral architecture that will take our strategic partnership to new heights. In this relation, in both countries, increased productivity, growth, job creation, and breakthrough technologies, and engagement towards all these are and will remain strong drivers of our cooperation and will give a further momentum to our relationship. We consider USA as our primary partner for India's socio-economic transformation in all our flagship programs and schemes. I am sure that the convergence between my vision for New India and President Trump's vision for making America great again will add new dimensions to our cooperation. I am very clear about the fact that India's interests lie in a strong and prosperous and successful America. In the same way, India's development and its growing role at the international level are in the USA's interest.
Trade, commerce,
one of our common priorities will be the development of trade, commerce, and investment links. And in this regard, in the technology, innovation, and knowledge economy sectors, the expansion and deepening of cooperation is also among our priorities. Towards this end, we shall take steps to further strengthen our successful digital partnership. Friends, we are not just partners by chance. We are also partners in dealing with current and future challenges that we may be faced with. Today, during our meeting, we discussed the serious challenges of terrorism, extremism, and radicalization, which are the major challenges facing the world today. And we have agreed to enhance our cooperation in fighting against these scourges, fighting terrorism, and doing away with their safe shelters, their sanctuaries and safe havens will be an important part of our cooperation. With respect to our common concerns on terrorism, we will also enhance our sharing of intelligence and exchange information to deepen and expand our policy coordination as far as possible. We also spoke at length on regional issues. The increasing instability due to terrorism in Afghanistan is one of our common concerns. Both India and America have played an important role in rebuilding Afghanistan and in ensuring its security. In order to attain our objectives for peace and stability in Afghanistan, we will maintain close consultation and communication with the US to enhance coordination between our two nations. in the Indo-Pacific region in order to maintain peace, stability, and prosperity in the region. This is also another objective of our strategic cooperation. In this area, the increasing possibilities for enhancing cooperation in order to protect our strategic interests will continue to determine the dimensions of our partnership. We will continue to work with the USA in this region. With regard to security-related challenges, our enhanced and growing defense and security cooperation is extremely important. We have spoken at length on this subject as well. The strengthening of India's defense capabilities with the help of USA is something that we truly appreciate. We have also decided to enhance maritime security cooperation between the two nations. President Trump and I have also spoken about strengthening bilateral defense technology and our trade and manufacturing partnership, which we believe will be mutually beneficial to us. We also discussed international issues and our common strategic interests. In this context, we are extremely grateful for the continued support of the United States for India's membership of international institutions and regimes. We truly appreciate the support, because this is also in the interest of both our nations. President Trump, I thank you for your feelings of friendship towards India and myself. I deeply appreciate your strong commitment to the enhancement of our bilateral relations. I am sure that under your leadership, our mutually beneficial strategic partnership will gain new strength, new positivity, and will reach new heights. And that your vast and successful experience in the business world will lend an aggressive and forward-looking agenda to our relations. In this journey of India-America relations, I think I would like to thank you for providing great leadership. Be assured that in this joint journey of our two nations towards development, growth and prosperity, I will remain a driven, determined and decisive partner. Excellency, my visit today and the extensive talks I have held with you have been very successful, very fruitful. And before leaving this mic, I would like to invite you to India along with your family, and I hope that you will give me the opportunity to welcome you and host you in India. And at the end, once again, I'd like to thank you for the warm welcome extended by you and the First Lady to myself and my delegation from the bottom of my heart. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, everybody. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Uninsured, sir. Does that mean also? Does the Senate bill have enough heart, Mr. President?
President Trump and Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi wrapping up a press conference there in the Rose Garden, not taking any questions today. I want to bring in Margaret Talev, our senior White House correspondent, who is at our Washington bureau. Now, Margaret, they talked about the strength of the relationship between the U.S. and India. President Trump pointed out they're the world leaders on social media. By the way, Prime Minister Modi has 31 million followers on Twitter. President Trump has 32.8 million followers. So Modi's giving Trump a run for his money. What are the big headlines out of what they had to say today?
That's right, and the other run for the money may be the growth of the economy. One of the competitions that President Trump sought to highlight. Look, there's a few big things here. The top line is that India wants to buy defense technology, and President Trump wants to sell U.S. defense technology, at least to certain countries. So that's a big area of commonality. Also, fighting terrorism, particularly Islamic terrorism. They have some like-minded concerns there. And we've just learned that Ivanka Trump has been invited to and will accept leading a U.S. delegation to India for an entrepreneur summit. There are a couple of areas of real disagreement, though, that have not been resolved yet. You didn't hear President Trump or the Indian leader talk about this from the podium, but the issue over H-1Bs and immigration remains a sticky subject. So does the idea of trade imbalance. This is a big deal for President Trump. He wants Asian nations to somehow adjust policies so that there's less of an imbalance. And India is one of those countries against which the U.S. is running a trade deficit. President Trump, when you hear him talk about fair and reciprocal, there's a lot of embedded and veiled language in there.
Prime Minister Modi has consolidated power in India. He's well poised for re-election in 2019. What's at stake here in terms of President Trump and the opportunity to take advantage of this relationship with India?
Well, as you heard President Trump highlight, it's the world's largest democracy. It's also the world's fastest growing economy, projected at somewhere north of 7% in the year ahead. Look, this is just a tremendous business opportunity. It also potentially is a country, and this is something that President Obama thought about as well before President Trump, that can help the U.S. to sort of temper the influence of China and other nations in the region. But look, in terms of a number of partnerships, whether it's economic or whether it involves military partnerships. You heard them talk a little bit about joint exercises or military exercises, intelligence sharing. It's just too big of a country to overlook. And in the technology world, it's not just economy, but it's in terms of talking about technology and the whole technology economy. You just can't overlook India.
President Trump also mentioned the two countries would be cooperating on North Korea. What did you make of that?
Well, look, there are a couple of pivot points for this, but one is that the new South Korean president is going to be visiting President Trump later this week. This is President Trump trying to show both China and South Korea, as well as North Korea, that the U.S. is looking to build alliances, whether it's in terms of sanctions or other approaches to North Korea, that the U.S. is not going to just sit by and wait for either China to act or for South Korea to get on the same page as the U.S.
Margaret, there were some questions shouted about the health care bill, which Trump declined to answer. He did tweet taking a bit of a victory lap around the Supreme Court travel ban issue. Talk to us about the follow-up when it comes to what's happening with the travel ban.
Well, right. Look, this certainly is the White House would take any victory they could get in terms of the travel ban. The application of this is going to be something to watch in the days to come. And there is, of course, what happens a few months down the road. But that is a bright spot on the White House today. The health care bill is a little bit more complicated, and you heard that question answered at the end as the President and Prime Minister Modi walked away from the microphones about whether the Senate bill has HART, quote-unquote HART, the new threshold test. Of course, the House bill, which the president had supported and championed at one point, he later criticized as not having enough heart. So how the White House gets its arms around the CBO score and the future of that bill now before senators could be quite important politically and strategically as Senator McConnell tries to figure out how to move forward.
All right, Bloomberg senior White House correspondent Margaret Talev at our Washington bureau. Margaret, thank you so much. President Trump and Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi wrapping up a press conference in the Rose Garden. And that does it for this edition of Bloomberg Technology. Tomorrow we'll be speaking with Forerunner Ventures founder Kirsten Green. She is one of the top venture capitalists in Silicon Valley right now. Cannot wait to speak with her. And Bloomberg Tech, of course, is live streaming on Twitter. Check us out at Bloomberg Tech TV weekdays, 5 p.m. in New York, 2 p.m. in San Francisco. That's all for now. This is Bloomberg.